if there's an Hausa person here, I would say, Inakwana, Yagejia. If you have thieves who say Nsu, Mpandeve. Then there are many other cultures. Africa is replete with cultures, and we are proud of our heritage. Our dressing communicates it, so my red cap, the waveforms, what color is this? Green and white. And then, of course, even if you are putting on a suit, you are still welcome because I'm from the Aba area of Nigeria. And we have a thriving industry in the textiles and the sewing, the shoemaking, and so on. So we are a very industrious people. And like I would always say, our people have a proverb that Akajaja with our manu. Let me translate. Sand-soiled hands beget oily lips. Sand-soiled hands beget oily lips. So I'd like to quickly say that, as in the case of the hardworking farmer, we are not a shithole like someone once addressed us. Africa has over 50 countries, 54 thereabouts, and I would say that we represent the best of the best. We're very industrious, very creative people, and it's there, steeped in our language, in our music, in our culture, in our poetry, in just about anything we do as Africans. So we also need to advance who we are, and like someone said in business, doing a business or doing anything in life without advertising it is like winking at a girl in the dark. Only you know what you're doing, no one else does. So as we move on today, I'd like to say we need to put our best foot forward. Who are we as Africans? What do we tell the world we are? Who do we tell the world we are? What represents the best of us? What's our best foot forward? So as we go through this few days of sharing thoughts on the culture of Africa, the issues we're dealing with in Africa, which are not particularly ours alone to deal with. Other parts of the world are dealing with their issues. We see what's happening in Israel, between Israel and the Palestinians. We see what's going on around the world, riots and civil insurrection. We see a lot of things going on. It's not really peculiar to us. However, it does not mean we should accept things the way they are. The Yorubas will tell you that when two siblings walk into a room and come out smiling, they have lied to each other. They have lied to each other, meaning that we are here today to share thoughts on exactly what we are dealing with, tell ourselves the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then the medical scientists will tell you that an ailment half diagnosed, an ailment diagnosed is half solved. So we are here to diagnose our issues, deal with security, deal with the conflicts, deal with all of the issues, poverty, and so on. Is there not a way? And like someone once said, 1,000 good intentions are not as good as one action. I'm happy to welcome you here today and to quickly say that today, May 25, is marked as the Africa Day. And I'm excited to report that in different offices, including my wife's office in the financial services industry, almost everyone is dressed African today. Pictures are going out there. We're showing the best of Africa. So even in the midst of the despondency that we face, banditry, kidnapping, and all of the challenges we face, we are still finding a way to smile. So wherever you are across the world, please smile for Africa. It is our Africa Day, and we're excited about it. That having been said, I'd like to invite you to today's session, and I'll go straight to the point. It's not a time for too much talk from the moderator. It is time to listen to our speakers for today. And it's my singular honor and privilege to welcome you to this session 4. We began yesterday and we had an awesome time yesterday. And I encourage you to please stay with us today. Encourage me as I introduce you to our speaker, first speaker for today. Dr. Louis Brown Ogbeifon was 10th president of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASA, and the convener of the Save Nigeria Oil and Gas Industry. He was the former first deputy president general of the Trade Union Congress, TUC, and former president of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators, ICMC, and a recipient of several awards. Dr. Ogbeifon is also the founder of the Africa Initiative for Transparency, Accountability, and Responsible Leadership, AfricaFora. He holds a bachelor's of public administration and a master of health planning and management from the University of Benin, respectively. Honorary Doctor of Philosophy in Leadership, Social and Community Development, honoris causa of the Evangel Christian University African Campus, Lagos. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Africans, we are at the village square right now. And like they say, when the drum beats change, you change your dance steps. And please do not be like the chicken that was made the animal for sacrifice because he was not around when the village gathered for a meeting. Permit me to invite Dr. Louis Ogwefun to speak on impact of corruption and conflicts on investments in the energy-rich Niger Delta communities. Time for urgent collective action. 1,000 good intentions are not as good as one action. Dr. Ogwefun, welcome to the Village Square.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate you greatly. And thank you, colleagues. First, let me please thank Winifred, AfricaFora, and all of us that have been here for a very wonderful job that has been done. I am so proud of being part of this, and I can tell you that Winifred and AfricaFora, they've done so marvelously well for Africa. If we have people like these that are ready to put their entire resources to make the world know about Africa, I think we'll begin to do things differently. I want to thank the moderator for that very wonderful introduction, because I was looking for the elephant in the room when he was doing the introduction. For want of time, I think I have 8 minutes to round up, so I want to do things differently. I am going to start from recommendations, so that if I don't even have time to go through some of them, you will have been able to listen to my recommendations. So, what must Africa do to change the narratives? It is not enough for us to lament from time to time. This is time for collective action. Yes, we've had our rough times with our colonial masters, with the advanced nations, but what can we now begin to do to ensuring that we are self-sufficient, that we can feed our people? In the next 20, 30 years, I hear that Nigeria, for instance, will be almost the 3rd largest in population in the world, and that is frightening. We need to be able to feed our people, therefore. So let me start with recommendations. My recommendation number 1 is that African leaders must stop the beggarly attitude and the beliefs in the handout largesse from all corners of the world. What do I mean? Sometimes in 2006, President Olusegun Obasanjo paid the last tranche of about $4.5 billion US, if I'm not mistaken, to complete the debt forgiveness of some of our creditors. So one would have thought that from that time on, we will be able to manage our economy without relying on foreign debt. But as I speak with you, our external debt rose from $10.32 billion US on June 30th, 2015, to over $28 billion US in 2020. What does that mean? It is like eating our future today and leaving the younger ones who are going to come after us for their teeth to start aching for the fruit they did not eat. We must use the capacity of our citizens to develop the abundant resources in Africa. We must create midstream industries within the resources value chain, especially in the oil and gas industry. Because what we do today is to export our crude, export our gas, and bring in imported products. We need to create jobs to meet with the growing population, without which Africa is sitting on the top of the gunpowder. We need to evolve transparent, accountable, and responsible leadership in managing African resources. We need to run an inclusive community engagement processes and an inclusive governance system. We need to evolve and enlighten communities on collective benefits of projects to remove individualism. We need to entrench the culture of collective ownership through opportunities for community equity participation. Our women should be involved in decision-making process, because as of today, I think we don't really encourage them much in most of the things that we do. And we need to encourage them, therefore, in decision-making processes at all levels of the value chain of oil and gas. We need to incorporate women into the frameworks of conflict resolution in the region, Niger Delta. Oil producing communities must be re-engaged in standardized formats in order to revive stalled projects that we have in abundance. Citizens should hold government accountable and ask what it does with our resources. And government should always see citizens and their civil society organizations as partners instead of seeing them as adversaries. Africans must begin to believe in their local preferences, in food, in their ingenuity. I remember that in the Civil War, the Eastern region produced their own fuel. So why is it that we have refineries that are not working and we now decide to be importing fuel from abroad? We must refine our electoral systems to give political freedom to free access to education and priority. The problem with Africa majorly is because people don't have free access to the electoral system that is devoid of electoral violence, stealing of ballots, and so on and so forth. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have given you the overview and our recommendations. So in the next 3 minutes, I'll just flip over my presentation. We all know that Africa is laden with consistent devaluation of our culture, the downgrade and supplant and replace the people's religion, cultures, and societal values. These have resulted in unbridled rivalry and corruption, and stoked corruption amongst our people. In the Niger Delta, for instance, we found out that this conspiracy theories continue to embed itself among our people, where only one person in the community believes that he is the charge affairs of what the community stands for. The person is the one that is likely to be a chief, that is fronting for one international community. They steal the crude, for instance. That crude ends up in international market and nobody is able to apprehend those who stole the crude. That cannot be, because if you say that Africans are corrupt, then those who are receiving our crude are more corrupt. And as a matter of fact, they should be charged for what has been happening to African nations. Africa produces about 18% of our global uranium, but I doubt whether we've been able to have about 0.5 of our nuclear energy. Take Congo, for instance, very, very rich in cobalt, and we know what cobalt does. Yet the advanced nations dump all African that are rechargeable things on us, when we can use cobalt ourselves to be able to reorganize our society and ensure that Africa lives also big. So that is why I believe that Africa is not really poor, but however, we've mismanaged our resources. Now, let me just go through some of the similarities between all African nations. You find out that anywhere you have hydrocarbons or rich resources, there is conflict. The question is why? Corruption is festering everywhere because of subsidies. Now, one of the things that happen in African nations is deliberate inbuilt conflict strategies into project cycles to stimulate conflicts by conflict entrepreneurs. Therefore, we have high failure rates. And these clusters of actors are surrounding the host communities, government, private investors, and the third parties. And they also have their own chain. And what are those chains, for instance? People want to graduate from being foot soldiers to middlemen and upper echelon. I'm approaching almost the 8 minutes, but I would think that during the question and answer, we'll be able to answer questions of subsidy or corruption. We'll be able to answer funds that we could use better in other areas. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me pause therefore to maintain the time, and then we shall come back to some of the nitty-gritties of the presentation. Thank you so very much.
Awesome. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Great job, sir. And I want to thank you for keeping it. Once a professional, always a professional. So, gentlemen, ladies, I'd like to request that, Doc, if you could stop sharing so that we can take the Q&A. So I'll be inviting us, and once more, in case you just joined, that was Dr. Wefu speaking. And he has addressed very key issues that would make us think. Africa has within herself the solution to her own issues. Nobody will do it for us. Like my people will say, the firewood in the community cooks food for that community. So at this juncture, I'll encourage you to please prepare your questions. But like they say, my people will say, do not drink the wine from the palm tree. The one from the raffia palm is coming. We're going to move straight to the next speaker, and I'll encourage you to please stay tuned, but keep your questions. If I have my way, I would request that you send in your questions as we move to the next speaker. The next speaker is Dr. Solomon Adeleye, and he'll be speaking on exploration and exploitation of hydrocarbon assets, challenges and opportunities. So I encourage you to please keep your questions coming, send them to the chat rooms. Our team in the admin will get them ready, and then we'll take them once we get to Q&A. Permit me to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Solomon Adeleye is a talented technological solutions executive who focuses on the safeguarding of regulatory compliance and international best practices within the oil and gas, mining, infrastructural development, and power industries. Adeleye's experience includes over 40 years of conceptual master plan studies, project developments, and environmental assessments that spans across the United Kingdom, Canada, and Sub-Saharan Africa. At the moment, Dr. Adeleye is a consultant to Facility for All Sector Transformation, FOSTA/Oxford Policy Management UK, and always promoting pragmatic and innovative solutions. Adeleye holds a doctorate in chemical engineering from Imperial College, University of London, United Kingdom, and is a member of the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of British Columbia, APEC BC. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome to speak to us on this all-important topic, exploration and exploitation of hydrocarbon assets, challenges and opportunities. Dr. Adeleye, if you can unmute, please confirm to me that a traveler is wiser than a gray-haired man. Thank you very much. God bless you. Dr. Adeleye.
Yes, I want to share my screen.
Yeah, your volume, if you can increase your volume a bit.
Good morning.
Yes, speak. Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm honored to be invited to be part of African building, and knowing that we are the children to build our father's enterprise, and that's why we are here. Thank you, AfricaFora, for all the efforts you have done and the success we have achieved thus far. And I pray that each of us will not be tired, that we shall put our shoulder with you and climb to the heights we need to climb as we lay this foundation for those coming behind. I will indulge by saying that I will go to my recommendations to just like Dr. Brown, and then come back to the challenges and the opportunities. I've just done 14 slides, and I felt that I may not be able to go over that in 8 minutes, but let's see how we do for time. My opening thought is intention without action is insufficient. Dr. Geneva Grace says that. So intention without dedicated action is simply not enough. Action without a clear intent is a waste of time. So it is time that we put these two powerful forces and ally them during these sessions and sustain it even after we have left here. The truth about it is the fact that if you look at Africa, we have abundance. Since the 4th century, when there was famine everywhere, there was grain in Africa all that time. So the grain have extended not only in the agriculture, but in the natural resources that is available within the African continent. Some of it have been mentioned by the previous speaker. But today we are concentrating on the oil and gas. And we have oil and gas assets all around the world. But in Africa, we have in Nigeria, Angola, Algeria, Libya, and it's scattered all around. Recently, Ghana, Liberia, Cameroon, South Sudan, Sierra Leone to have oil assets, oil and gas assets. So the natural resources is available in abundance. For example, in Nigeria, we have a gas asset that is about 3 times the oil resources, about 203 trillion cubic feet of cubic meters of gas is available. And that's the largest proven gas available in Africa and the 9th in the world. Again, these are untapped, underutilized, underexploited, and even wasted in gas flaring. So these challenges that we have experienced over the years is the fact that there is lack of good governance, inability to have a transparency relative to contracts, sanctity of contract not being followed, obsolete physical framework. In all these point to the fact that Africa has not been managing our oil and gas resources in the most pragmatic and appropriate manner. But today I want to say that let's go to the opportunities. In 2001, African Recruit did some research and found out that Africans around the world, most of them have postgraduates, and they send money home. As at that time, it was about 3 billion that is being sent to Africa. As at today, we have close to 50 billion US dollars that is being remitted to Africa. So I want us to clap for ourselves. That is a success. However, that success needs to be repackaged in this new area where we are. That success, efforts that has gone into that, resources that have gone, skills that have gone into that success need to be refocused. Because as at that time, only 96% of that resources is, 96% of that resources goes to welfare, settling bills and other things. Only 4% is being invested. So there has to be a paradigm shift to have a customized and sustainable hydrocarbon development in a short, medium, and long-term strategy that will bring industrialization. We have to flip that coin and have 96% to be invested rather than 96% going for all other things that is not bringing economic value to our people. So as Africans in diaspora, we have to expand public-private partnership and financing solution, develop and execute relevant professional training, and promote and implement local content art. Because most of us outside are very qualified, multi-talented, and we work in different multidisciplinary settings. We can bring those assets back home so that we ensure security and sustainability value-added hydrocarbon products. And that brings me to economic benefit how we are going to align this initiative. It will bring such economic benefit and financial benefits and social benefits, all embracing employment opportunities for the people of the continent. And we'll be able to do value added to our oil and gas. It's not just exploration, but we'll be able to exploit them locally by following the right fiscal responsibility, developing hydrocarbon refinery, multiplying the number of LNG to meet the market demand around the world, developing gas industrialization, gas-based industrialization program, both for medium terms and for the medium assets and the end assets, so that we ensure that all foreign exchange that is going out and will now be retained within the continent of Africa. And then we'll be able to learn from the Israelis too, that circulate resources among their people about 18 to 19 times before it gets outside that circle. As Africans too, we'll be able to develop this economic benefit in such a circle whereby we will be rotating it within the continent and thereby multiply the effect of the benefits. So I'm saying that we should embrace and manage the realities that we have in a timely manner by packaging the information in a way that will benefit our people. For each, and do it again, not a general term, one size does not fit all, the peculiarity of each of the African continent, and be able to meet them with those specific needs. We should establish and maintain spirit of mutual respect, cooperation, trust, and beneficial relationship. Above all, utilize a multidisciplinary advisory team to harmonize all these initiatives so that we can consistently provide guidance for successful implementation of this plan. So I hope my time is up now, and I will just stop there. But my PowerPoint presentation is available. If during question and answer, we can go to specifics. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, sir. Awesome. You did a very good job. Awesome job. And like my people will say, an old person does not grow old in the dance, they know how to dance. As a young wife, you can have as many rappers as possible. But you can never have as many rags as an old woman. Experience has spoken. It's obvious that you know your onions and you've spoken from the bottom of your heart. And I believe that nobody can solve Africa's problems except Africans. So like I said, thank you. I'm seeing the questions coming in. Thank you, participants. And I want to once more also wish you a happy Africa Day. We're going to talk more on this, on the significance of that day when we go to the Q&A. But let's get the questions coming in. And I'm excited that they are all coming in droves. Let's dig up more questions for our speakers so they also refer to their slides and are able to do justice to the time we're spending today on this discussion. That having been said, I'd like to invite us to listen in to the profile of our next speaker. Our next speaker is someone I love to introduce so much. Alan Adjaho. Permit me if I have pronounced it wrongly, so please correct me. I remember being in Accra sometime in 2006, and it was a very good experience. And I'm excited that my brother is an amazing person from that part of the world. So Alan Adjaho is the managing partner of First Shields and Company, a management consulting firm focused on capital projects and international trade and investments in Africa. Prior to heading First Shields and Company, he was a partner at Dame Data Analytics, a data-focused strategic advisory firm in Africa, in Accra specifically, in Ghana, servicing the data and strategy need of public and private sector organizations. He began his working career as a policy advisor to the Speaker of the 6th Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. At First Shields, Alan focuses on the complex problems faced by international organizations with a fresh African perspective. I like that angle, very African perspective. He will be speaking to us on the underutilization of mining resources in Africa, focusing on Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Africans, non-Africans, welcome on board our brother, Alan Nzuko Adjaho. You're welcome on board, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the introduction. So today, my intervention is on the underutilization of mining resources in Africa, focusing on Ghana. And the reason why I chose this intervention topic was because in the past 12 years of my life, 3 events have shaped the path of my career. So the first one happened when I just completed high school, and I met Mr. Chachi Chikata one of the greatest legal minds in the country's history. And he gave me a fact sheet which detailed how much Ghana was making from our gold revenue. And you kind of realize that the government of Ghana just makes 10% of all gold royalties. The second event happened when I went to my hometown to see the construction project that the family was doing. And I saw that some of the kids I grew up with were working on this project. So the kids I would go back home and play with on holidays were now Masons, not actively involved in education. And I couldn't understand how my age mates, who lived in a community that was rich with great resources, were not applying their mental abilities to educating themselves. And the final, the final event happened last year. I was in a meeting with the former government minister, who happened to be on the task force to address the issues of illegal mining in Ghana. And I was discussing with him a project that we had in Nigeria. And I spoke about bringing all this consortium of investors and mining companies together to help this Nigerian state optimize its natural resources, solid minerals and precious metals. And then he mentioned to me that whilst what we're trying to do is all good, the problem is that we've been mining in Africa long before industrialization, right? So that made me go back and look at my plan I had for this state in Nigeria. Now, I'm not trying to say that mining in Ghana is bad, right? Because the data shows that the mining economy in Ghana has contributed immensely to the growth of the country. So the mining economy, for example, consumed last year over 1 million kilowatts of electric power, right? That translates to over $240 million in revenue for our power companies. The mining industry consumed over 350 million liters of diesel last year, which equates to over $342 million in revenue for this industry, right? So, and then the mining industry also has a lot of social intervention programs throughout the country, building schools, building farms, right? So one cannot say that the mining sector has done anything bad, but the issue with the mining sector largely deals particularly with the fact that they are playing with the rules, right? They are playing with the rules that we've set for ourselves, and that is the problem. That is the cause of our underutilization of resources. And I say that because within Ghana, I think even within Africa, we have this issue of clientelism within the mining sector. So you see that when a government is in power, you have a 4 to 8 year time frame to implement policies, whereas to develop mining and have this long term, you should be looking at the next 20 to 50 years, right? And it's kind of interesting because we had in Ghana a mining policy framework developed in 1994 that was implemented in that was launched in 2014, right? So we find that this is a big problem, but we can't only just blame our governments, right? So pre-colonial, before the establishment of colonialism in Ghana, we find that the chiefs that were the custodians of these lands had a system where they took a third of all mineral revenues, and the reason and what they used that for was ornaments and regalia, and they also had taxes, right, imposed on these concessions. The opening up of the country to colonization led to the Django Rush, where companies like the African Company or the Gold Company of Africa or the South African, the British Company of South Africa will set up mining operations in Ghana. And you find out that because Ghana or Africa was largely an extractive state, majority of the roadways and infrastructure led out of the country, led out from mineral zones as opposed to developing the country. So we find that this is a problem. But beyond the chiefs and beyond the colonial powers, you realize that as time has gone on, the broadening problems of clientelism has led the country back. So so when we had this engagement with the state of Nigeria to advise on its mining, on redeveloping this mining sector, the first thing that we looked at is rethinking investment approach and stakeholder management. So for investment approach, we came up with a module called EPC plus I, which is engineering, procurement, construction plus investment, where we are bringing in partners that are directly putting money down into the state so that there's a long-term view in partnership with the state. We didn't want to allow the state to be the sole decider of what is necessarily good for its citizens, but we felt like the citizens themselves should be at the table when discussing these mining development plans. And we also so we're trying to create a circular economy, and that is a long-term approach in developing the sector. Right? Obviously, there are issues that will come about there, and so our goal is not just to look at gold as we do in Ghana, because gold contributes to 98% of government revenue from exports of minerals. But our focus is not only to look at gold, but to look at carbon and other minerals in a way that we can realize true economic development, and not using the state of Nigeria as a test run, and then being able to populate it throughout Nigeria, and then bring it back to Ghana and other developing countries. So I think that marks the end of my submission. So I think as the time for questions comes, I'll be able to answer stuff in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our speakers are such amazing speakers, professionals by all means, and they have done excellent job. So, but I'm happy that we've managed our time very well today. So that affords us great opportunity to share thoughts with as many of us as have sent in questions. Without much ado, I'll go straight to the questions, and I have a couple of them. They're actually here. I wish to start from Dr. Owefu. I don't know if you're ready for me. Let me get some encouragement. Are you ready?
I don't think he's here at the moment, so perhaps you can start with one of the other two speakers.
Okay, excellent. So I'd like to start with, let me come back to you. Let me see who goes next. Let me say Dr. Adele, are we good? Or Solomon Adele, our wise Oga.
Thank you.
Are you ready for me?
I'm ready for you.
Okay. Thank you. You know what my people say, that emergency challenges a great person, but it is an emergency that you know who is a great person. That's Africa for you. I'm sure by the time we're done today, we would have heard some very interesting proverbs. I live by them. So, Dr. Adele, someone is saying here, acknowledging that we have extremely rich African-born groups capable of taking up new ventures to develop the exploitation of hydrocarbons. Do you think they can rival the foreign and/or Western groups who are always deemed to be the experts or more reliable? Would you want to repeat that question? A bit long?
The question is okay.
Did you get the question?
I did. And I would like us to look inwards. Over the years, we have our successes outside the country. I mean, outside the continent. Most of the innovative, intelligent professionals are well placed and they are celebrated overseas. If the right political will is there and the leadership that we talked about governance yesterday, and we have the right leadership in place, I believe that we can compete reasonably well with the IOCs, because the leadership, the multidisciplinary people that have been successful outside, we come together as a team. It's part of my recommendation, and then work out the plan. They have been successful outside, but they are not successful at home. So they need to now come to be successful at home and work out the plan that is sustainable for our people. That's my thought.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir, and we respect that. I have another question for you, sir, if you permit me at this juncture. That's also for Solomon Adeleye. What milestones would you foresee in the African future of exploration and exploitation of hydrocarbons in the coming 70 years?
Well, the Western world has their own agenda. But again, I go back to the leadership and political will. We should have a program that is all-inclusive for our people and that will be most beneficial. We should not just be copying. I know we are living in a global village, but our circle of influence should be able to sustain us. People say 10 years, 15 years, hydrocarbon will be water. But you know, we have coal, for instance, in the east, I mean, some part of the continent. And there are technologies these days that you can still use that to reduce the amount of climate change effects. Similarly, if you come to the oil and gas sector too, there are sustainability initiatives that we can use to control the gas flaring, that we can use to reduce the climate change effect. My brother mentioned, it's in my slides too. One of the things we've been doing is that we do monolithic development. We need to be holistic in every approach of our development. And circular economy is the in thing now, that you are sure that everything that you bring out of the earth, you add value to it, use the waste in another way to ensure that your people benefit in the most pragmatic I say the three E's: empowerment, employment, economic, and right environment. So except we do that, we shall just be following the West or the industrialized nation in their program. So we need the leadership that is independent, leadership that is ready to promote our multidisciplinary team that are successful outside, and to give political will to those initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Solomon Adeleye. You have done great justice to this question. And I'm excited that we're discussing hydrocarbons here and the issue of holding governments accountable. And I like the way you took it, Alan. You actually gave specific instances from Nigeria. Now, I'm happy that Dr. Wefo is here. I don't know if you heard the question I asked Dr. Solomon Adeleye, but I could just repeat it. So you see, before I ask you your own direct question, Dr. Wefo, so you take them together. We asked Dr. Adeleye, acknowledging that we are extremely rich, we have extremely rich African-born groups capable of taking up new venture to develop the exploitation of hydrocarbons. Do you think they can rival with foreign and or Western groups who are always deemed to be the experts or more reliable? Dr. Wefo, you're on. Unmute your mic.
Thank you so much. First, I want to take you from two perspectives. The first perspective is to say we have youths that are vibrant, that are intelligent. If you looked at most of our graduating students in Harvard, in most universities or colleges abroad, Nigerians come in the top first 10 percentile. And so therefore, I believe we have the intelligent youths that are able to do exploits if guided aright, especially those of us within within Nigeria. Two is the fact that our problem is not really that of youth not asserting themselves, but that we have not provided the environment for them to be able to explore, to grow, and then take leadership positions. So if you don't give them opportunity, because any company that is doing well has succession planning. Some companies, for instance, as they are recruiting their staff, they know the ones that are going to become the managing director in the next 15, 20 years. Can we say that of Nigeria? Can we say that of our political system? Look at our space, for instance. Those who are still revolving around the state of power are the people that started in 1960. Those 40 years ago were presidents and head of states. Those who were ministers those days, they are still the ones that are there. So if you don't give these youths opportunity, therefore, to assert themselves, to learn, how can we then project adequately what they can become in the next few years? So my answer to that is yes. But the problem and greater challenge that we have, apart from what I have mentioned, is the fact that we don't have political freedom that will allow these youths, therefore, to drive the successes that we are expecting. Why? They don't have the money to compete. They don't have the money to bribe. They don't have the money to employ youths like themselves. And that is why I also blame them. And I said that, for instance, they are the brains of the older ones. They are the ones that will hold on the Instagram. They are the ones that will hold on the media space. For these older ones that are using them and not giving them the chance to be able to. So I see that Nigerians, if we open up the space in transparency, accountability, and responsible leadership, especially from those of us who are older, and we begin to bring these children in and begin to also tutor them, have succession planning in place, just like corporate organizations that are successful do. I do not see any reasons why our youth cannot compete globally.
Thank you very much, Doc. Like the African proverb would say, especially from the Southwest, 20 children born the same year can never play together for 20 years. So it's actually painful if our young people are not able to compete globally. Ironically, they are doing well out there. And like they say, a prophet does not have respect except in his own land. But it's okay. It's okay. This one too shall pass. So I'll send you the next question, sir, Dr. Louis Obefon. Your comments about the inclusion of women are particularly appreciated. Facts and research support the fact that better inclusion of women and youth makes for a more sustainable solution. And what concrete ways do you suggest we include women? I suspect this question was by a woman.
Oh, of course, it must be. First is the fact that I'm also going to take it in maybe 3 layers. The first layer is that women themselves must assert themselves. Women themselves must not begin to see themselves as an appendage of the ancestries of those men who are in political power. If people like Okonjo-Iweala did not believe in themselves, I am not sure she will be where she is today. We once have Ezekwesili and others in government, and they did extremely well within their portfolio. So we have a former president in Liberia, a woman. She didn't need to beg for it. She has said herself, she believed in her mind, and she believed that she can do it. And we are also seeing it in the whole world. Therefore, the place to start is for our women to know that they have the numbers. The women who are voting are more than the men. Because if the youths and women come together, I can tell you that the old stock, they don't have any choice but to give way to them. But however, when the women begin to believe in affirmative principles of trying to give them numbers, produce about 35%, when you are voting for others, then we can never get there. I'll give you an example of what happened to one of our women that participated in presidential primaries some few years back. In that primary, women were in their thousands. This woman scored about 3 votes, which means her own vote, maybe the vote of the son or the daughter, I don't know. So how can we therefore ensure that women have it. Women must prove their mettle. They are intelligent enough. It has proven that when you give a woman anything, she's able to replicate, she's able to multiply them, right from the home to the national level. The second aspect is that rather than women sulking about the back seats that they are taking, can they begin to reach out to their colleagues outside this nation, Black people like us, who will be ready to put resources for funding their campaigns? It is not enough for you to lament and you don't have where to go. And women, therefore, when they also come into offices, let them prove that they can do it, because there are certain instances. I mentioned Okojowala that did very well. There are some other women that done very well. But we once had some women occupying some positions of authority in Nigeria and did not maybe compete so well. And at the end of the day, their records were dented. If that of Okonjo-Iweala, for instance, was dented, I'm not sure she would be where she is today. So can we therefore be able to see how we can reshape how we present ourselves when given that opportunity? I tell some sportsmen, I say, even if your coach didn't believe in you and they are not using you, the day they give you the jersey, let that jersey not return back to the person you substituted. That is the same analogy I want to draw with our women today. They have the power, they have the numbers. They don't need to be beggarly about asking men to give them some percentage. They can fight for it, they can go for it, and I'm sure we can make it happen.
Wow, Doc. I remember, I don't know if you like football. Do you love football?
Yeah, I do. I played football. I didn't play for the National League. I didn't play for the nation, but I played in National League in the Leventis of those days, stationary swords and so on and so forth. So I did.
Okay, so you remember Emmanuel Amunike at the World Cup of 1990, the Nations Cup of 1994. Amunike, just to buttress your point, was not used throughout the tournament.
Exactly.
But in the final, Westerhoff, talking about capacity.
Right.
Brought in Amunike. Cote d'Ivoire was leading Nigeria by 1 goal.
Mm-hmm.
From nowhere, Amunike came in and scored 2 goals, and Nigeria won that World Cup. So confirm what you just said, that Nations Cup, Amunike displaced whoever was holding that jersey and went to the USA 94 World Cup.
Exactly.
So just to agree with you, and I'm sure Alan, I'm going to come to you next, and Dr. Dele agrees with me, and I'll listen. I hope we're enjoying this interface. Just to say that someone said, if you are the menu at the table, and an African proverb also says, if you're not close to the fire, your yam will never roast quickly. So I don't know if our Nigerian women, African women, understand that the onus lies on you to collaborate with other women. Turn your competitors to your collaborators, we say in business school. Join forces with women in other parts of Africa, women in diaspora. It's not only chatting on Instagram and Facebook and the rest. Use this technology for personal and corporate advancement. We have this impression that women don't like fellow women. I actually don't think so, because if you see a mad woman naked on the street, usually it is women that remove one piece of wrapper and cover the woman. But men will see a man walking around naked and they'll be smiling as they say, look at that man, he's naked. But women cover fellow women. So do not accept that narrative that women don't like women. So I totally agree with Dr. Wefu that women should rise. Who is supposed to be giving each other 35%? We have more women, I believe, by statistics, than men. Exactly. You know, so organize yourselves. Okay, I think I have one last one for you, Dr. Wefu, and before I move to my brother, Alan. A lot of citizens across the continent have accepted with defeat that politicians are all corrupt and that the state of affairs is unchangeable. How do we challenge that?
Thank you so much for this question. It will take time to be able to dissect it because they are also in layers. I do not want to believe that all politicians are corrupt. We might say that, well, majority of them are. amongst all the politicians, we still have some good ones. The way to break through and getting them to do what we want them to do in transparently and accountably managing us is to ensure that every citizen must rise to refuse the stipends they give to us. Because remember, one of the things I said when I was in my opening, in my recommendation, is that we should not be beggarly. How can somebody come to me, for instance, give me 5,000 naira to vote for him or her, and then I took that money, voted? Is that the 5,000 naira I'm going to eat for 4 years? The answer definitely is no. If a politician had to come to me to give me gun to take down one of the opponents, by the time that politician assumed office, will that politician put me on his payroll? The answer definitely is no. Therefore, we need to start thinking differently. And one of the ways we need to start thinking differently is for us ourselves as citizens to understand that we can change the narrative. And I want to give you an example. Look at NSAS. When they started, people thought that they were just a bunch of individuals, do no good, gooders, and so on and so forth. But whether we like it or not, that is where the youth knew that they have the numbers and that they can change things in this nation. So our political narratives can change if citizens know the power that they have. The masses are the ones that put them there. Each time we lament over who our leaders are, one of the questions I ask is that the leaders came from amongst us. How did they get there? We enabled them. When they also misbehave in office and they are booted out, we own them as thieves. Let me give you an example. There was one minister that was being probed. And what I heard one of my colleagues say to me was that, why are they talking about that man? What of the one that the other person from the other side has stolen? So why must we now own thieves? Why must we own those who don't believe in us? So the answer is the citizens must do what is right. They must not side with evil. Siding with evil means you are going to snag ballot boxes. Siding with evil means you are going to take money in exchange for your vote. Siding with evil means that you vote for incompetence over competence. And when you do that, you are shortchanging yourself. So the masses must rise. I am not talking of a revolution that they are going to carry axes or battle axes or guns. I'm talking of a revolution where we can say that, for instance, in Nigeria in 2023, our election cannot go the way of the others. We must change it. And if we didn't do that, I am very sorry for the continent.
Sorry. We will not be sorry. We have enough time, like our people will say, chase the black goats during the day when there's still light, because night comes when the color will blend with the darkness. So we're going to do our best to ensure that we avoid the avoidable. I'm coming to you, Alan, my brother. Awesome job. And I like the fact that you brought it home to Nigeria. I'm sorry, my people say it is where you live that you fence off. You fence your compound. So you're using Nigeria as an example, resonated with me. Yeah, this is Africa, but I'm excited that you remembered us in Nigeria. God bless you. So this question is for you, my brother, Alan. No man is an island. Neither is our continent. We live in a global world, despite the neo-colonialism that we tend to denounce. How do you and leading Asian powers, Japan, China, India, and the rest, to the best advantage of Africans? I have a second question for you before we tie this session up. So this is the first.
Okay, all right. So, well, I mean, it's business, right? And that's how I'm looking at it, right? So I have a client who is the largest contractor in the world operating in Ghana. And in the brief meeting, he said to me that, look, we're here to do business, right? We're here to make money, right? And that is the sentiment generally. Everyone is there to make money. And so when we are looking at the development of Ghana, or Nigeria or wherever. The question is, how do you make a deal that meets each person's selfish interest, right? And that's where I like to begin. So if I'm looking at, when you look at your states, the state that we're working in, the issue is that we have a governor that actually does want to accelerate growth, hooked on mining industry, and reduces reliance on the federal government. And so when we were coming in, because when we were coming in, we came in with a group of people that are Chinese and people from other sectors, and explained to them that this is what we're trying to do, and this is how we're going to go about it, right? And we want you, because you have the expertise, to come and do X. We want you who have the expertise to come and do Y. Because at the end of the day, it is capital intensive. Mining is capital intensive. And any investor who wants to put money into a project would like to see that competent people have done feasibility studies, or competent people have done assessment. Without that system, it won't work. And so we created not just a coalition of just Africans or Ghanaians or Nigerians, but we are creating a coalition of Ghanaians, Nigerians, Chinese, and the British government to come and leverage each other's abilities on this project, because there's an entire department in England called DIT, Department of International Trade, and they set up offices throughout Africa and throughout the world with one purpose: to open a gate for investment into this country. So obviously they've realized the potentials of it, and they're putting out money for it. It is our job to do, or to replicate to an extent what Botswana did, by, instead of sacking the colonial guys, to say that you stay on board and this is what we want to do. And so how do we make a deal that works for all parties, right? But then in making a deal that works for all parties, you have to be very conscious of your base, right? So if you're a government and you know that you represent the collective interests of the people, you have to structure a deal that the people will be happy, right? Because if the people aren't happy, then, especially in the mining sector, then we would have the incident that we've seen in the Delta State, where rebels come out, and rebels don't come out because they want to rebel, right? The people aren't born with innate desires to be rebels. I don't believe that. And in Ghana, we have this issue where we have galamsey, right, which is illegal mining, where people endanger their lives and go and mine, in the pits, right? They aren't endangering their lives because it's a good thing for them, right? They're endangering their lives because there's no other available option, right? So there has to be a comprehensive framework where the interests of citizens are protected, whilst at the same time balancing the interests of the investors, because they are the ones that have the capital, right? Because Ghanaian banks, for example, lend at an interest rate 24%, right? And they have all these strenuous things. Nigerian banks will have high interest rates, and they're very particular on what industries they lend to. And then the mining industry itself, it's a very new industry. So banks are more risk averse than anything else. So obviously we have to look elsewhere for the capital. So when you're bringing parties involved, you have to balance the interests of, okay, what would make this bank happy? What will make them do a deal? What will make the mining services company willing to come and do this? What will make this person do that? And to balance all those interests, where my firm comes in is to say that we will leverage our balance sheet as a firm. So we leverage our balance sheet as a firm to conduct the geological survey at zero cost to the state. So with that, we now know where the various minerals are in your state and the value. And so with that assessment already done, we can now negotiate a better deal for the state, for the people of the state, and a good enough deal for any investor to come and recoup their investment within an agreed period of time. So in terms of balancing interest, I think that is the way that we are going about it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Okay, so just because we're almost running out of time, I'll still give you this one. He said, would you care to suggest what you consider the next milestones or steps that could bring forth a positive future for mining in Ghana and West Africa? I say that again. Would you care to suggest what you consider the next milestones or steps that could bring forth a positive future for mining in Ghana and West Africa? You can just take 2 minutes and do that.
Yeah. I think with this, it's quite simple. So the next milestones for me would be for the government of Ghana and the government of other African countries to put their money where their mouth is and to actually take money and then conduct nationwide geological surveys, comprehensive geological surveys to know where various minerals are and in what commercial quantities. And for the government themselves, instead of borrowing largely to finance payroll, to borrow to enable businesses in Ghana and West Africa to create a circular economy, because that is the only way in which we can grow. So when governments are willing to do these things, then you realize that we're on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping to time. At this juncture, except I'm missing something, I believe we have done relative justice to this topic, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'd like to thank our own dear Dr. Owefu. Thank you for that green cap, fila. In Yoruba land, it's called fila. Thank you for representing Africa. Our wise man, Dr. Solomon Adele, is still a Ekaro. Thank you. We are grateful. Eshesa. And then my brother, is it proper for me to say Akwaba? I should have said that earlier on, Alan. Am I right? I should have said Akwaba earlier.
Yeah, it's okay.
I should have said it first. What do you say when you want to say goodbye?
Well, so Akwaba is tree.
Welcome.
Nice.
Okay.
So normally in my language we just say bye. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So when you want to say bye, what do you say?
In my language.
Yes.
I'm an Ewe, so when we are saying bye bye, we just say bye bye. Right? We don't. We modernize that's far.
Okay. So I can see. And actually, Ghanaians speak so I read English first degree, so Ghanaians have a very, very good diction. I had a Ghanaian teacher who taught me English in school. They're very good with English, and then the Indians too. So it's exciting to see that there are a lot of resources we can actually leverage in Africa. So I want to thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, my Ebons. Thank you, my Ogas. Thank you, my big brothers, and my brother, Alan. Thank you for sharing your thoughts so copiously. And thank you for the passion with which you spoke. It's amazing. I want to thank all attendees for joining. Please do not leave. Like my people will say, let the CDMs remain and let the land remain. Okay, we have more CDMs to plant. We have more creativity to do. And please do not go. If you leave, you'll be missing out. Like I say, if you're not close to the fire, your yarn will never rose quickly. So even our speakers are invited to please remain. Please make sure to come back for our second session. It's going to be on security as a driver for Black and African development. It's starting at Nigerian time. That's 11, I believe. And then, so I'll just take a water break, not too long. A water break, maybe 5-10 minutes max, and let's return. Our speakers are already in the house waiting to shoot. Once more, thank you very much. And like Dr. Adele said, we should clap for ourselves. Please, let's clap for ourselves as Africans. Let's commend ourselves. Like they said, the lizard fell down from the Iroko tree. Nobody praised it. And he shook his head and praised himself and said, I have done well. So we have done well. It's not all doom. Thank you very much. See you during the next session.
Thank you.
God bless you. Get your palm wine, Dr. Adele. Go drink palm wine. Thank you. See you at the next session.
or coconut
Okay.
water, whatever. Thank you. God bless
I will.
you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye. God bless you. See you at the next session.
Yes.
Hey, everyone.
You're welcome back. I hear you.
Thank you. I believe Barrister Olunkwa is with us as well.
Yeah, I can't get through to the other speaker.
Okay, can we discuss this in the chat?
Good day. Barrister, if you can hear me. Oh, wow, the camera is on. How are you doing today? I can see your red cap. Can you hear me?
Barrister, I believe we can't hear you. We can see your lips moving, but we can't hear you.
Check your volume. You have unmuted actually, but check your volume, sir. I love your smile actually. Check your volume.
Could you try disconnecting and reconnecting your headphones, perhaps?
Yes.
That might help. Dr. Buzercook is also with us. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for joining. Thank you. And I also thank everyone who has kept faith with us.
Can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah. Where's your red cap? I can see your red cap. I can see your red cap first. Even the Hausa cap now.
I have a natural red cap, sir.
Okay, well, no problem. What you call your thing is what it is. Amazing. Good to see you.
So how are you, sir?
Awesome. I'm having fun.
Good. I'm happy to hear that.
I'm happy this event was organized by the AfricaFora team.
Oh yes, the same here, sir. The feeling is mutual.
I'm telling you. The human mind is so powerful, anything is possible. Just put it out there. The rest, the creator would perfect all you're doing. Let's just keep trying. Let's keep pushing. Let's not give up on Africa. Yeah. Okay, Vice, I'm going to send you a chat now. I'll send you a chat.
Dr. Buzuku, can you hear us?
I can. I couldn't hear one of the. Is it Mr.
Olunkwa, yeah.
Yeah, I was
Just
having a
help me
hard
now.
time. My apologies. I was having a hard time hearing you.
But so were we. It wasn't just
Don't
you.
bother with that
Okay.
surname. Don't, Asma, do not bother with that surname.
Don't worry, I struggled also. I'm glad you could
My
join us.
last name is just as fun.
Don't go near that surname. Oh. It's actually much longer, you know. It's actually much longer. Would you want to hear the longer version?
The longer, the better, right? The more history.
Okay, there's a history behind it. It actually has a meaning. The meaning is shame does not come to a man of wealth. So you say, Uru akpaghị onye akụ. Uru akpaghị onye akụ. Now, Winifred will relate. I'm from the Ngwa area in Abia State in Nigeria. So Uru is, woo, 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 shame on you, shame on you, shame on you. Woo, woo. You have disgraced yourself. So my people say, if you see a man of wealth, a person that carries themselves with dignity, and wealth is not just paper. I always argue that wealth is not paper. Wealth is, like my people say, the person that has people is greater than the person that has money.
Exactly.
So dignity,
Purpose, passion.
You have regard, passion. We have regard, you have respect. Like if I knows what I'm saying, he can relate. Yeah. Shame does not come to you. Shame does not come to you.
So my last name means camel hump. So we can interpret that. My family used to be
Equally
camel traders.
poetic, I believe. Equally
Where are
poetic.
you from?
Libya, originally.
Wow.
Mhm.
Gaddafi's country.
Mhm. Well,
I'm
no,
still in
Libyan's
pain.
country.
I'm still in pain that he never got to achieving the United Nations of Africa. That was his passion.
What is it? I'm sorry.
He had this passion for having the United Nations of Africa.
So I don't live in Libya. I live in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, Google it. Gaddafi had this passion
Yeah.
for the United Nations for Africa. He wanted an ecumenism of sorts, having all African countries come together and drive passion. He was very passionate about that before he passed. I hope
Yes,
someone
I
else
hear.
takes it down. Wow. Okay. Crystal.
Yes.
Yeah, anything before we go? I'm actually warming up. I'm so looking forward to
I believe
Asma's
we
session.
are ready to go. We have attendees, and whenever you're ready to take it away.
Well, because of those who may be using the timing, we have 5 minutes to 11 Nigerian time, 12 o'clock your time, CEST. Okay. What do you think?
Let's ask staff, perhaps. Can staff give us the green light if we should start?
Please do.
All right, good. Okay, thank you. That's the signal.
Okay, I know what to do. I know what to do. All right, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters across the different divides of the world, my name is Obinaya Chinazoko Ozoma Ngozi Uruapa. You did not hear an English name, you did not hear Crystal, neither did you hear Winifred. You didn't hear any English name. I do not have a fight with the English, but just to tell you that my people have a proverb: if you're not careful, they'll carry you and pass your father's compound. Identity is key. You must have an identity. Who are you? Who are you? And as we race up to go into our next session, I'd like to point out a few things that I have here. Many of us know that today, May 25, is the Africa Day. Wikipedia has some information that might be useful to some of us, and permit me to share as I buy 3 minutes before 11 o'clock Nigerian time and 12 o'clock CST time. So here, the Africa Day is the annual commemoration of the foundation of the Organization of African Unity. Today, it's called the AU, African Union. But it used to be OAU, Organization of African Union. Okay, and today, and it was founded on 25th May 1963. It is celebrated in various countries on the African continent, as well as around the world. So as we mark Africa Day, Tuesday, May 25, 2021, it's important to ask what the significance is. It's the anniversary of the foundation of the OAU, and is observed by member nations of the African Union. So I encourage you to, wherever you are, light a candle for Africa, for the souls of the departed. But even as you light that candle, from the rubbles, from the despondency that we have experienced, it's also important to know that, yes, there might be darkness, there might be despondency, but there's still hope. With people like my next speaker that I'm going to introduce, I believe we have hope. It's not all lost. It's morning yet on Creation Day, like Achebe would say, the writer, Chinua Achebe would say, morning yet on Creation Day. And like Ayukoye Ama, the Ghanaian author once said, the beautiful ones are not yet born. The beautiful ones are not yet born. But remember, like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the Kenyan author, once said, he wrote the book, Petals of Blood. Petals of blood. Blood has been spilled. But within that, you can also grow flowers. In the rubbles of the challenges we are facing in Africa, kidnapping, banditry, and the rest, there's still hope for Africa. So I encourage you, as we mark the Africa Freedom Day, Africa Liberation Day, whatever name we call it, to have hope. Like my people will say, the hunger that has hope does not kill. Let's aspire for the best as Africans. Our morning's first session was very exciting. And Dr. Adeleye, my brother from Ghana, Ajaho, and Dr. Wefu, all drew our attention to the challenges we're facing in Africa and called the women of Africa, the youths of Africa, the grown-ups in Africa to join forces to make progress. Only Africans can solve Africans' problem. Nobody will fight for you. And like our people will say, who will say that the mother's soup is not sweet? So as we move in to discuss in our next session, the first topic, permit me to introduce our speaker for this session, herself a woman, which buttresses Dr. Adeleye's point and Dr. Befu's point that the women of Africa have the population, the intellect, the Okonjo-Iwealas, the Obiezekosilis, I dare say, Dr. Asma Abu Zakuk are representing us so well. She is an industrial organizational psychologist within the Military Corporation's Enterprise Strategy and Transformation Technical Center and Human Organizational Systems Department, where she applies evidence-based data-driven approaches to innovation and transformational change. Dr. Abu Zakuk's thought leadership span organizational and leadership development, culture change, stakeholder engagement, strategy planning, human capital management, strategic communications, and inclusion and diversity. She also trains leaders and students on inclusive leadership practices, emotional intelligence, and transformational leadership styles of behavior. Asma has provided strategic guidance on the enterprise transformation efforts of the Department of Homeland Security, Department of State Census Bureau, Department of Veterans Affairs, Department of Defense, Department of Treasury, General Services Administration, and the Internal Revenue Service. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, permit me to invite to speak to us on the topic Sentiment Analysis for Security Sector Reform, Dr. Asma Abdul Zakuk. You're welcome, sis.
Thank you, Mr. Ukawa. No problem. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. And will my slides be up, or do I need to project them? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I've been working on this.
There.
Okay, wonderful, great. Excellent, thank you. And so the topic today is on sentiment analysis for security sector reform. Just really quickly, I've been in the social and behavioral sciences field for quite some time. We've worked in international development for quite some time. I'm actually indigenous North African, although living in the United States now from Libya. So really proud, sister, to be here with this community today. So the topic today is sentiment analysis for security sector reform. And this is just one way of better understanding the security situation in a country without a violent, without having to go through a violent process. And so if you go through the next slide, please. And this is based on a research that we conducted on the countries of Tunisia and Libya, North Africa, after the events in the Arab Spring. And so what we found was that, many of the, as in North Africa, many of the countries in Africa, the countries are mired in cultural security systems and structures. And we know that security systems and structures are critical to democratic transition and adherence to good governance and rule of law. So the intent of the research was, how could we develop a socio-cultural understanding of security contexts in denied areas, and given that it was during the Arab Spring, it was considered that. And also in Africa, we do have a number of areas that there are many barriers, to access. Next slide, please. And we know that social media has exploded, right? And that it's really become a formative force for communities to convene and collaborate together. And especially during the Arab Revolution, it was the force. They moved from the ether sphere right into the physical sphere. They were able to commune online before in person. Next slide, please. Also found that most of the topics that people use during, with social media is around community politics and religion. And this was in Tunisia. This is the Pew Research Foundation. And so they found that there's a lot of analysis, there's a lot of intelligence that could be essentially captured by the chatter and the noise on social media that could actually be used to better inform decision-making, policy-making, and to better get a sense and pulse of what people are feeling, thinking, desiring, wanting, etc. Next slide, please. And so the question was, can sentiment analysis help us achieve a deeper socio-cultural understanding of security sentiment? So it's really understanding, what are people thinking? Are people in a state of fear? Are people, in a state of ease? Next slide, please. And can sentiment analysis really help with building governance and rule of law in country? And so, it's controversial. We don't want Big Brother, monitoring our words or our, but the intent is really analyzing sentiment, right? So it's not just the language, but is the sentiment negative or positive? And next slide, please. And what is the sentiment about that's negative or positive or neutral? And so when we talk about sentiment analysis, it's really identifying and categorizing opinions expressed in text as positive, negative, or neutral. Next slide, please. There are many tools available. And my organization, MITRE in particular, we use the Sentimenteer tool. Next slide, please. And the content, so you run the tool, and essentially you could assess sentiment around whether it's Twitter or I was not focused really on a daily social media. I was looking more at newspapers, other open source content online, editorial sources. So I was really trying to get a general sense of the sentiment, from publications, not just chatter and noise, in addition to blog material. Next slide, please. And so we analyzed Libya and Tunisia during January 2011 to April 2013. We looked for keywords, security sector reform, Libya, Tunisia. And I was really looking to how to create a security sector reform framework using sentiment analysis, using access to this type of data to help inform building security sectors for the people, right? By better understanding the pulse of the people. Next slide, please. And so really it's, what are those indicators? What are those signals, right, from the people that determine whether they have a state of trust or social contract in the state? Next slide, please. And so understanding security sector reform through a social cultural lens by understanding sentiment can help to better understand opinions and attitudes that drive security sector perceptions of security in a particular nation or area. Next slide, please. And so what we also know with security sector reform is that it addresses cultural and cognitive diversity, the inadequacy of institutions. It's a framework, it's a model on how to build good governance and rule of law in the security sector. But it's a long, if you go to the next slide, it takes too long. A lot of times when you think about it, especially from the US perspective, USAID or DFID or one of the big agencies, it takes a long time to understand how we can invest and build the security sector, especially if you're coming in as a funder, as a donor agency. There's the assessment, planning, monitoring, evaluation, implementation. And so the thing is with sentiment analysis is that you can actually get access on the security sector, the actors, the institutions, the issues, the topics, the influencers, the messages, using various media sources quickly. You can do it in a month. You can do it in a week, right? You can really get a pulse on the sentiment, on the social and behavioral indicators of your security sector without having to go through a very long, drawn out, in-person field examination or assessment. And again, I'm coming from the donor perspective in terms of how they fund security sector. Next slide, please. Tunisia case study. I'm going to go through really quickly some of the analysis. Next slide, please. So what you see here is our analysis of the sentiment expressed during July 2012 to April 2013. And what you'll see is the events where there were some really negative issues. You'll see the red is negative, the blue is positive. And so I'm going to list the events here in particular event C. September 2012, A. The Tunisian protest attacked the US embassy due to the Prophet Muhammad film. Additionally, embassy attacked American school, senior Salafi leader arrested over embassy attack. And then the date of elections were delayed in October 18. So there was a lot of negative sentiment. November 2012, we're talking about B. The Salafists imprisoned for their attacks died from self-imposed hunger strike. Again, there was negative general sentiment. C, that was probably the biggest one. You can see where sentiment completely fell. February 2013, opposition secularist politician Shukri Beledi is shot dead, sparking huge street protests. Prime Minister Jebeli to stop unrest calls the killing of political assassination and strike against the Arab Spring Revolution. These topics, you can see how the sentiment correlates to key events in the security of the nation and how just understanding the sentiment around editorial publications can give you a better idea of what people are saying and what people are thinking. As I mentioned, this one in particular focused on editorial publications, but we've also done it on other social media such as Twitter, and it correlates the same. It's just a lot of noise. Okay, I have one more minute. Really quickly, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. I want to go to the Libyan case study. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. I do the same for Libya, and you can see here, August 2012, Libya's general was assassinated. October 12th, new PM stands up, and Libyan militias found to have executed dozens, according to Human Rights Watch video. So it correlates. So if you go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. So ultimately, what I'm saying is that when we talk about building a security sector, we need a system, right? A dashboard to understand the different signals that are going on, and technology can really provide that. So whether it's sentiment analysis, which gives you a socio-cultural indicator of what's going on and into the minds, right? The thoughts, the hearts of people, or it's Google's hotspot, which is kind of a violence, it's a heat map of violence and struggles and violent struggles around the world. Or it's a world governance indicator or the global peace index. But all of these indicators together can help inform policymakers on building institutions, in particular security sector institutions, right? It's institutions that listen to their people because they're actually taking in the signals from the environment, right? Institutions that are not dictated from above, but rather informed from below. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and just looking at, so here are some dashboard measures for recommendation. Quality of security provision, people-centered security, quality of security sector governance. We're not talking about number of arms or weapons, right? We're talking about how people interact with the security sector and how we can better understand these measures as we're better trying to build and develop these particular sectors. And I think I can end here if that's okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry, I rushed through it really quickly. This is probably an hour's presentation, but I wanted to give you the gist, so thank you.
We truly appreciate my sister. Great job, awesome job. I feel you. I make presentations myself, and I can assure you that it's never easy to speak in 8 minutes. But you've done very well. The slides are beautiful, a lot of data,
great,
a lot of information, and I believe that when we settle in, we're well able to digest better. And this
excellent.
is me speaking to all our listeners, all our viewers, attendees, everyone. Please make your notes and let's make Dr. Abdul-Zakuk's time worth a while. Let's drill down, prepare the questions. You can start posting your questions, and then the backroom team will get all the questions ready and we'll throw them out when the time comes for Q&A. Once more, I thank you, Dr. Asma Abdul-Zakuk. Thank you very much. And as we move to the next presenter, I encourage everyone to stay on. Our next presenter is an amazing lady. I think it's a day of ladies. A day of ladies. Yeah, I can see Dr. Adeleye is saying, yeah, thank you for the informative presentation. Very, very informative, well drilled down. So permit me to introduce our next speaker, another eminently qualified speaker. And Dr. Adeleye and Dr. Befum must be very excited right now because that was exactly their recommendation. A beautiful lady, I don't know how she achieved all of what she has achieved from her very youthful age, but that means there's hope for Africa. You know, so Crystal Gaillard is a public policy analyst with a specialty in European governance. Gaillard currently works as an analyst at Friends of Europe, a not-for-profit think tank for European Union policy analysis and debate. Gaillard holds degrees in law, political science, and public policy and development. Her other interests lie across conflict resolution, justice, international security, and international development. Her expertise in governance and development was notably marked with her role as editor-in-chief of the Maastricht Policy Journal, a governance and public policy student-led academic journal at the United Nations University. She has been a speaker at various conferences on the topic of endogenous development and higher education in Nigeria, and is also a consultant in a Ghana-based consultancy. Passionate about culture, she is also a champion for the representation of Black and African women in French media. To this end, she has also been a consultant for movie directors, as well as lead scriptwriter and assistant director. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it was the Holy Book that says, do not let anyone despise your days of youth. Our proud African daughter that we're proud of, Crystal Gaillard, is going to be speaking on desecularization, the key to peace. What the bitter cola sounds to the ear is not what it tastes in the mouth. So let's taste a bit of what Crystal has to offer. You're welcome, sis.
Thank you for that introduction. Hopefully my presentation will be on par with that. You've set the bar quite high, and so has Dr. Abdul-Zakuk. So hopefully I can follow that. So today I'm going to speak about securitization and mostly desecuritization and how that can be an element to forward development, since our topic of the session is security as a driver for Black and African development. So just a quick word about what I do. I work for Friends of Europe, which is, like you said, a think tank based in Brussels, and I work for the Peace, Security, and Defense Department. And what we do is we organize panels and debates, but we also produce some policy output on various topics on peace, security, and defense. And the latest one being on the situation in the Sahel, looking at European and international and African involvement in the Sahel and a way forward and out of that conflict. So about securitization, I'll try to stay within my 8 minutes, as Dr. Buzaka did. So securitization is when you make an issue that may have elements of peace or security, but wouldn't otherwise be defined purely as a security issue. And it is made about just that, so about national or international security. And the profits reaped by this process are plentiful, and I'll try to explore them in my 8 minutes. So if we go back in time, the original contract between the state and the citizen is about providing security of property or of self. And by making an issue about security, actors, political or otherwise, tap into that need for security that citizens may have, and thus garner support that they wouldn't have had otherwise, either political support, economic support, or state support. So for example, creating a multi-state alliance to justify the invasion of Iraq, for example. I'm going to mention another obvious American example of securitization, which is the war on drugs. Declaring a war on drugs essentially made an issue that was about public health and other domestic public policy issues about security. And by making it about national security, it made the gangs and the drug providers and the drug user an enemy of national security. And instead of eradicating the drug issue, it just militarized police forces. It justified extreme use of violence. It allowed for damaging foreign intervention in Latin American countries, overt or covert. And also fueled by racism, it ostracized entire parts of the American population. So we can see in this issue, which wasn't about national security, that was made about security to justify the violence used to tackle it. And I don't have the time today to explore all of that. The policymakers, health workers, social workers, the populations themselves, and sociologists will agree that securitization was, to a certain extent, a disaster. Views vary, but I would say that that's the public discourse on it. But we can find instances where securitization may have been successful. And I would argue that in those cases, the solutions brought about, the resolution of those issues did not often prove as sustainable and could have been reached with less violent means. Securitization is not all bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. It can also be a useful tool to garner support for emancipation causes, for example. It allows people to realize that they have been ostracized or oppressed, and that they can and should sometimes organize and fight their ostracization or oppression. This was the case in a lot of emancipation movement in anti-colonial wars on the continent, but also civil rights movements in the US, in South Africa, in Palestine. So the concept of securitization is not unique to the Western world. For instance, if we look on the continent, the securitization, I'm going to say this word so many times in 8 minutes. The securitization of migration of migratory issues in general is a common practice across the African continent, with roots in European policy, of course, but still. And likewise, ethnic conflict, as we call it, is often exacerbated due to securitization when the root causes actually lie elsewhere in political exclusion, unfair access to land, lack of representation, and others, for example. But conflict is profitable, and securitization is a useful tool for internal actors who seek to keep or gather power, influence, money, whatever it is, through violence. And that makes peace processes unsuccessful. And that is a big issue across the African continent for years now. Because we have now set a precedent where prominent rebel, insurgents, whatever leaders, can earn a political position as a bargain in chief for peace. And what I mean by that, I'll explain briefly. Sorry, I'm checking the timer. Is that, for example, these groups that are ostracized, that have a rebel leader or whatever it is, will have to send that person to the table when we're holding a peace process with the government, with local organization, with NGOs, etc. And they will want to have representation, and so we will be offering them a political position as a counselor to the prime minister or to the governor of the region, something like that. And often what happens is when those groups are not satisfied with the position that they are offered, they go back into conflict. And so we end up having entire populations who are direly affected by these conflicts, solely because the people at the helm of it are securitizing all these issues at the root for their quest for power, money, whatever it is. So going back to my previous point about conflict being profitable, conflict is fueled by a plethora of factors: youth unemployment, pre-existing cycles of violence, if there's been violence before, gender violence, gender inequality. Securitization capitalizes on all of these existing factors and makes a religious or ethnic difference that is, let's say, minor to mid-major, and makes it a security issue, a major security issue, and rallies around the support of all these ostracized community to perpetrate a war against this other. But what this does, and what is the most important part of what I'm trying to say today, is that this tends to make people believe that the solution to this conflict will actually lie in armed or military repression of the issue at hand. And that doesn't address the real issue, or it just fuels the conflict further and just worsens the situation. So if we look at the Sahel, for example, expertise, since we just produced a report with Friends of Europe, France was called in to the Sahel by Sahelian country through an official request for emergency help against counterinsurgency that threatened the Malian government at the time. But the securitization of the issue in the Sahel and the new supposed war on terrorism, French war on terrorism, is a justification for the prolongation of their involvement on the Sahelan soil. And this is looking to become the Afghanistan of Europe and of France, with little to no proven efficiency of their involvement in the area. And local government have now taken note of that and realized that this has been extremely securitized, and instead of turning to local initiatives, providing more security for local groups, providing alternative incentives for farmers or herders or whatever it is, working more with the local militias and desecuritizing the issue, because 9 years of war have not been successful in any way. Because they now understand that the root causes that fuel these Islamist groups and conflict in the area fall in the realm of severe drought, the exclusion of the Tuareg and northern Mali population of northern Mali, and other regions, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, etc. The severe youth male unemployment, which is a factor for conflict, climate change, which affects both farmers and herders in the region, the inability of government to address climate change as a real African issue, gender-based violence, and a lot of other things. And the governments are finally starting to realize that after 9 years of war, the terrorism and Islamism wasn't the problem. It was actually all of these other issues. So we need to desecuritize and de-escalate. A similar thing has been happening in Central Africa. There's been a long-standing conflict in Congo. And what happened, for example, is that there was a group that started in Rwanda, the ADF, which is a Muslim group in Uganda, in the 1990s. And then when that conflict didn't work and wasn't profitable anymore, they moved to Congo, started recruiting even by force to fuel this conflict, because it is profitable for these groups to be in conflict. And so local populations find themselves sucked into it. They securitize the religion issue, and this is very dangerous for the local population. But it's also very dangerous because there's another head to this hydra, because foreign groups such as Europe or the US are starting to consider these groups terrorist groups, and also starting to consider whether more military intervention is needed. And what we do not need is another Afghanistan, another Iraq, or another Sahel situation in Central Africa and Mozambique, or in our Democratic Republic of Congo, or Central African Republic. So what the main point of this is that desecuritization needs to be considered to allow room for African socioeconomic development. And what we need to look at when we're facing a conflict and insecurity in the region is not sending more troops, and troops are needed for stability, but we need to address the key issues. We need to provide political representation, reliable public health system, protection from gender-based violence, support to fight climate change that threatens the fragile livelihoods of these people. If you remove the wood, you starve the fire. And that's what we actually need to do, instead of asking for help from all these foreign countries that profit from war, and also fueling these local groups, because we have a lot of African people who are very vested in prolongating these conflicts because it is profitable to them. So I will stop now because I've gone over time. Thank you very much for your patience. But that's my main point. Desecuritization needs to be considered if we want to move forward.
Awesome. You just took it off my lips. Bravo. Well done. Well done. Well done. I actually wrote it down. Can you see it? Can you see it? I was taking notes. I actually wrote it down. I'm a good student, you can see. And you nailed it. You just killed it. You just killed it. And just to say that I'm so looking forward to Barrister Olunkwa's presentation, because that actually strikes home in Nigeria. You know, I'm going to introduce him, but just to whet the appetite of our listeners. Awesome, 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 Ms. Crystal. I award you a PhD from my village, Ibekwamis, in Arongwa local government area of Abia State. The ancestors have mandated me to award you an honorary PhD.
I will be adding that to my CV. Thank you.
Please add it to add it. Ndengwa, my people have already. If you like, laugh at us all you want. But I like this. This securitization. That's one word that I noticed you almost chewed your own tongue. I'm almost chewing mine now. This securitization needs to be considered to allow room for Africa's development. 100%. Can't take anything away from this. But I like this proverb you took away. Now you're trying to take my food from my mouth. I thought I was a proverb master. Now you just took one from me. Remove the wood, starve the fire.
Yeah.
Wow. This should be tweeted as per like go viral right now. This should be a trend on Twitter. And just put hashtag African proverb. So once more, bravo. Bravo.
Thank you very much.
Bravo. Well done there. Awesome job. Okay, so all I did this for was to, first of all, commend Crystal. Like my people say, when you commend the woman that prepares the black beans porridge, she'll prepare a better one. So when next we call Crystal, she's going to give us another very powerful presentation. And this is rave review from Dr. Dele. Thank you, Crystal, for the well-articulated presentation. I agree, totally. I agree. Okay, so while we get our questions ready, permit me to invite our next speaker. Our next speaker is an amazing gentleman. His profile is daunting and motivating. At least there's still hope for us over here. Hear me. Barrister Ifeanyi Olunkwa. If only people know the meaning of this name. Olunkwa. That is a voice of music or voice of dance. He's a lawyer and was the legal advisor to the Abia State Committee on Environmental Matters. He also served the government of Abia State in the capacity of special assistant to the then governor of Abia State on interstate relationship with emphasis on economic empowerment. He was the assistant national public relations officer, assistant national legal advisor, and former national legal advisor to Ohaneze Ndi Igbo, the Pan-Igbo cultural group. He was also part of the Ohaneze arbitration team to resolve Ondo crises. As a youth mentor, he is pastoring a youth church where he focuses on teaching entrepreneurship skills to help them succeed in life as youth unemployment numbers keep rising in Nigeria, his home country and mine also. This has included free computer training, vocational trainings, and investment trainings for the youths. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome to speak on the topic the impact of the menace of Boko Haram, Barrister Ifeanyi Michael Olunkwa. You're welcome, my brother. Koronkwa Gawabiko. Interpret what I just said. Check your volume. Check your volume.
Oh, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, very well, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Explain to them what I said.
May I wait? Can you hear me, sir?
Very well.
Okay. May I, with humility, subject to our overriding convenience, welcome us all to African Week celebration packaged by AfricaFora. My topic for discussion on this great day reminded me of a quotation from Thomas Hobbes' poem, Livingstone, 1651. Life, according to him, is nasty. Life is brutish and short. Without the functional state, we are torn apart in alienating civil war. Thus, my goal is to help us understand the social economic impact of the menace of Boko Haram. I will start by briefly defining Boko Haram. Boko Haram is usually translated as Western education is forbidden. And you will concur with me that the emergence contributed in no small measure in changing the African narrative. Let me quickly talk about the economic impact of Boko Haram. The fact that farmers in northeastern states abandoned their farm due to incessant killings by Boko Haram have obviously an adverse economic impact. It is on record that investors, both local and foreign, relocated from the zone due to daily cases of kidnapping for ransom. Fish farmers are not left out of the whole thing. Fish farmers of Lake Chad Basin that are hitherto major suppliers of smoked fish, a delicacy for Nigerian meals, also deserted their businesses. In April 2021, it was reported that Boko Haram took over a small community, Shiroro, which hosts one of Nigeria's energy dams. However, they also imposed VAT and income taxes on residents. The aforementioned criminal activities of Boko Haram constitutes a threat to food supply, economic sabotage, and general insecurity. Let me briefly, subject to overriding convenience, talk about the social impact of the menace of Boko Haram. Nearly 3 million Nigerians were reported to have been displaced in a decade of Boko Haram activities, as schools have been shut, hospitals deserted, and affected communities fled to Chad and Niger Republic. The northern eastern Nigeria, previously tagged in global multi-dimensional poverty index, MPI, had faced a worse deteriorating standard of living due to Boko Haram conflict. What about the Nigerian government? Oh, the failure of our government. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria outlines a social contract among the Nigerian people.
Yes, I want to.
The document, so to say, is structured to protect the fundamental rights of Nigerian citizens. Chapter 4 of 1999 Constitution, as amended, and Section 33, subsection 1, provides inter alia. Every person, every Nigerian has a right to life, and no one shall be deprived intentionally of his life, save in execution of the sentence of a court, in respect of a criminal offense of which he has been found guilty in Nigeria. Section 11 of the Terrorism Prevention Act 2011 makes kidnapping a felony and imposes 10 years imprisonment. Section 1, subsection 2, section 1, subsection 2 of the said law define terrorism to include all acts of banditry. However, since the emergence of Boko Haram, successive civilian governments in Nigeria have not only failed to guarantee the safety of lives and property in the states that had witnessed violent crimes, they have also failed to successfully prosecute members of the group in a court of competent jurisdiction to serve as a deterrent to others. So what is the way forward? Because Nigeria must get it right. Solution number 1, engagement of Nigerian youths via award of scholarships, via organizations of games, via job creations in all the local governments. Number 2, provision of government incentives to support SMEs. Number 3, provision of incentives to Nigerian farmers, irrespective of their tribe. Finally, the Nigerian government must demonstrate political willpower in punishing offenders of the aforementioned laws. I believe strongly that Nigeria can get it right. Nigeria is one of the countries that is endowed with both human and natural resources. We have crude oil, we have gold deposits. Oh yes, we have the likes of Okonjo-Iweala. We can get it right. And by extension, Africa can get it right. Thank you very much.
Wow, 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 wow. Awesome, awesome, awesome. You know, Paris Olunkwa, if you permit me to tell the world where we are from, my people say when you are called Hyacinth, you are not expected to rob local permit. When your name is Hyacinth, you are not expected to rob local permit. What it means is that to whom much is given, like Crystal, like I told you earlier on, much is expected. So Paris Olunkwa, you have done extremely well, and you have spoken with a lot of passion. You have put it all out there, and they say he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. We in Nigeria know what it has been like. The Lake Chad has shrunk to 10% of its 1970s size. And I like the fact that Dr. Asma Nzuko, permit me, I hope I didn't murder that name.
That's okay.
Libyan origin. Now, it might be interesting to you, Doc, to hear, just like Barrister Olunkwa, most eminently marshaled, that Muammar Gaddafi, by virtue of the things he did in Libya, the positive ones that is, managed some of the persons today who are bandits. But once he was killed, which goes back to the desecularization that Crystal spoke about, once he passed, we had militias spreading all over Libya. They did not stay within the boundaries or the confines of Libya. They migrated south. And if you look at issues around the environment and deforestation, desertification, and so on, the water levels, the green areas started drying up.
The herdsmen migrated south, searching for green vegetation for their cows and their cattle. Implication, farmers' produce negatively impacted. So I like the recommendations from Barrister Olunkwa. We have to deliberately, and someone said, for you to make it in life and in business, you have to be deliberate, you have to be strategic, and you have to be intentional. We just have to get up and beyond this conference, move from just talking about it to acting it out. And I like the fact that the persons who have spoken today are not persons who are just speaking. There are people who are practicing either in the magazine or someone like Dr. engaging actively with the young people. So I want to commend all our 3 speakers and to say, well done, bravo, well done, well done. Thank you very much. You have done us proud as Africans.
Thank you.
You have done us proud. You have done us proud. So Barrister Olunkwa, please, you owe Dr. Abdul Zakuk, you owe Dr. Abdul Zakuk 1 Akwete cloth from behind her back. You owe her.
I'm glad you like that.
And for Crystal, you owe her the Afipo maiden beads.
Yes, I can get one in Afipo, a good one.
We move over to the Q&A. In the absence of any other thing at this point, it's time. So I have a lot of questions that have come in. And I would invite all our speakers to be on standby as I throw these questions at you as we take the Q&A. Now I have a couple here, starting with you, Doctor. Are you ready for me? This is good. Are you ready, Doctor? Unmute?
I am, sorry, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, could sentiment analysis help identify better what countries need for their transition to security? In the case of other countries who hadn't taken part in the Arab Spring, I repeat that, could sentiment analysis help identify better what countries need for their transition to security?
I think so. I think it's a least invasive opportunity, and it's informed by the people. I understand that the internet saturation and social media saturation isn't as great in Africa, but more and more people are using their phones. I mean, the technology is accessible, so I think it provides an access point to listen to the people, right? And I think that's the way to move forward.
Awesome. The other speakers, please, I believe you listen in on Dr. Abu Zakuk's response to the question, and you heard the question I asked. If you need me to repeat that, I'll repeat that to you. At some point, you are at liberty to also pick on the question I asked and to also give your own from your wealth of knowledge. But let me also stay with Dr. Abdul Zakuk. Do the security systems and structures necessary for good democratic transition that you mentioned need to come from the bottom up, i.e. civil society, or rather the top down, the government?
It's both in order for it to work. It's both. There has to be a meeting. I mean, it needs to be informed by the bottom up, and top down needs to be held accountable, right, to the needs of the people, to the needs of the country. So you have to have both. It can't just be one or the other. I mean, if it's from civil society, look what's happening in the United States, for example, right? And I don't know if you'd seen in the state of Oregon, they actually had a free zone, right? A security free zone where the people took over, and it was peaceful, for a short time, but eventually you need institutions. So you can't have vigilantism, right? You need institutions, you need structure, and so that's where the top comes from, right? So yeah, you have to have both.
Yeah, I like that. You have to have both. And like our people will say, when the left hand washes the right hand will wash the left hand.
And both need to be accountable to the other. Yeah.
They need to be accountable. So visibility, transparency.
Trust.
trust. Yeah, if you someone once said that if people like you, they'll smile for you. If people love you, they'll listen to you. If people trust you, they'll do business with you.
Yeah. And we need good leaders. People trust good leaders, especially in Africa. You know, we have many good leaders who've come from this, you know, wonderful continent, but we need to continue developing our leaders. Okay,
that's a discussion I know you're passionate about, reading your profile. But the interesting thing is that, like my people will say, whatever fruit tree you see that has sprouted is coming from a particular root. And like the good book says, if the foundation is destroyed, what can the righteous do? We need to look at our leadership socialization process and leadership recruitment process. If people get the leadership they deserve. So we need to watch that as we grow. Boko Haram did not just start and become. It's symptomatic of the leadership failure that has been there over the years.
Yeah, the leadership, the institutions, the structures, the injustice. I mean, all of it. That's why the cultural, social, behavioral lens provides such insight. You know, it's not just the transactional security. You know, it's not just exchange of bodies and weapons, or, you know, there's more to it. You know, it's a whole of government approach, and that's where the sentiment comes into play.
So there's no smoke without fire. And as our people will say, wherever a child is crying and pointing fingers, if the father is not there, the mother is there. Okay. All right, just give you food for thought. But let me not leave you, Dr. Asma. There's a question here. It's actually for all speakers. What can women do to prevent or contain war? This is a direct hit for women.
Can I take that question?
Before you let Doctor take it, and then I'll.
Oh, sorry. Of course, please.
Okay.
Doctor, go ahead.
By the way, I like this.
So I was going to ask, what can women do? Is that the question?
Yes, there. To contain,
educate yourself.
To prevent or contain war.
Educate yourself.
Educate.
Empower yourself. Empower your daughters. Empower your sons.
Children.
That's what you can do. Honestly, I think education is the strongest weapon.
Wow. Peace building, conflict resolution, respect for others. Wow. Awesome. Okay, Crystal. Shoot.
Yes. So I was going to talk about, in my experience, to, like I said, start a fire, you need to remove the wood, and women can play in removing that wood from the fire in several ways. We have found that, for example, in areas where there's poverty and we give support in cash support or whatever it is to a household, in order to perhaps send their daughters to school, and not just the son, but also lift the household out of poverty, which would make them less likely to turn to a rebel group or an armed group and fuel the conflict further. If we, for example, involve the head of the household, who is traditionally a man, the whatever it is that we have given them as a support, monetary or otherwise, tends to not work out. Whereas if we involve the woman, then the household will be actually effectively lifted out of poverty, the daughters will be sent to school, and the young son will not fall into the trap of the youth male unemployment, which I talked about earlier, which fuels conflict further. But also in terms of conflict resolution, a lot of these things will involve the rebel leaders and the government officials, which tend all to be men. When women are not included in conflict resolution, it's proven by a lot, research supports the statement, it is not sustainable. For conflict resolution and peace processes to be sustainable, not only do local women need to be involved, but women need to be involved at the higher level. So the government officials can't all be men, the rebel leaders can all be men, the representative of civil society cannot all be men, the leaders of NGOs are involved cannot all be men. So that's another way that we can involve women, because we can't, I entirely agree with Dr. Abuza-Cook's statement that we need to educate women more, but by educating women more, they won't necessarily have, once they have the education, they might not have the opportunity otherwise. So a lot of the people who are in power, who are unfortunately mostly men, need to understand that if they actually want this conflict to end, if they want development to be possible, they need to actively include women, and they need to make room for women to be welcome and be listened to, and not just as, you know, we have one woman on the panel, for example, or one woman in the cabinet, and that's fine. No, we need women to be considered as as necessary, not just, oh, we want equal. No, women are necessary and intrinsic to a lasting peace process, to a developed country. If we look at Western Africa, #1 population in terms of entrepreneurs is women. Women are drivers of change, drivers of peace, drivers of development, social development, economic development. And if we want to get out of conflict, women need to be at the core of it and not just, you know, on the side of it, oh, let's include a bit more women. No, women need to be at the core of it.
Excellent. So I stay with you. Women need to be at the core of it. Incidentally, the women are the ones that give birth to us. They are already at the core, and no one should deny them what is rightfully theirs. Someone just asked, why are all conflicts in Africa termed as tribal or religious? That's in a minute. You take it in a minute while I find the next question for you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I think, well, some of it is potentially a heritage of colonial understanding of Africa, but I think it's not just an African thing. We also find the same thing in Asia. It's easier to dismiss. If you say it's a tribal conflict, then it will never be solved. There will always be different tribes in this country. And it's easier to perpetuate this conflict to justify foreign intervention, to justify military intervention, to justify the fact that the peace processes haven't worked, where in fact the reason why the peace processes haven't worked are all the things I explored earlier in my presentation, the fact that they don't actually address the root causes. So in my opinion, it's either comes from miseducation, misinformation. A lot of people will just regurgitate what they've been told at school, in the media, whatever it is, but it's also a political tool because it allows you to dismiss the fact that this conflict will be eternal and cannot be ended, in my opinion. And it's the same thing for religious conflicts. There are a lot of areas where religious populations cohabitate, and often if you look at the root causes of the trigger of a religious conflict, there are other things which would be inequality, poverty, etc., when the religion is not the key issue. It's all part, for me, it falls into this whole securitization thing, which was you take an issue which is easy to securitize and rally people around, and you call it that instead of looking at the root causes of it, which would require accountability, transparency from the government, better representation, which are costly, not profitable, and don't allow people to concentrate power in the way that they would. I believe you're muted.
Yes, I am. Pardon me. In one word, do you suggest we radically securitize all issues?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you suggest we radically desecuritize all issues?
No, because I mean, there are definitely regions where, and like I said, securitization is necessary for some populations to be able to realize their situation and organize and fight against it. But also it's impossible to desecuritize everything. There are issues that are intrinsically about security and need to be considered as such. And there are issues that may not be entirely about security, but have elements of security and will have to be addressed that way. So military intervention will be needed in a lot of areas in Central Africa, like I said, and in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, and all of these regions in Africa. But we need to realize that we are securitizing to the extreme and that we need to de-escalate this in order to actually end these conflicts.
Excellent. Okay, so this is very close to it. How do you suggest the securitizing can address the situation in West Africa regarding the other non-Sahelian countries?
Well, if we look at, for example, Ivory Coast or Nigeria, we were starting to see similar situation of things that were happening in the Sahelian countries like Mali, Chad, etc. And the conflict is actually spilling over. But it's like what I said for Congo, there were already tensions due to other reasons there, the drought or the lack of representation, the corruption of the government, both local and at national level, and the fact that they've seen that there's this instability going on in these other countries, and these groups see that they can profit from it. If we don't tackle these key issues that we're seeing in Ivory Coast, in Nigeria, in Burkina Faso, although it to some extent it's too late, if we don't tackle the poverty, the gender-based violence, the youth unemployment, and the lack of access to education, the lack of access to water, etc. And if we don't If we don't allow these groups, if we allow these groups to securitize these local issues, then we're going to see the rise of conflict in Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso and Nigeria, which is already quite afflicted, and it will just be impossible to get out of it, and it will just spread to the entire region in West Africa.
Excellent. Okay, depending on how much time we have, if you permit me, Crystal, to move to Barrister Olunkwa. Thank you, great job there. Barrister Olunkwa, there's a question for you here, and maybe like a minute and a half, so we tie this all up. The solutions that you present sound robust. However, how do you suggest we introduce them? Which groups, in bracket government or civil society, will initiate the engagement of youths and so on, and with what resources? This is very direct. Unmute and answer, sir. Yeah, unmute. Unmute. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
The solutions that I preferred are to be initiated by the government. If you recall, I did mention the social contract. People surrender so many things in exchange for welfare, in exchange for security. Any government that cannot provide for her citizens, that government, so to say, have failed. So it is the responsibility of the government of Nigeria to provide jobs for the youth. The youth must have access to scholarship. The youth must have access to the basic amenities of life. I give you an example. The issue of SMEs, small and medium enterprise. If the government does not support them, most of these SMEs will die a natural death. So they need incentive. So at the end of the day, the government will be able to generate funds. The issue of incentives for farmers. Oh, you will concur with me. You will concur with me that farmers need incentives. Beyond incentives, the government must also find a way to stop the heaters from attacking the crops. That is why I align myself completely with the position of South-South governors vis-a-vis the ban of open grazing. So it is, I end with this, it is the responsibility constitutionally of the government to initiate these solutions that I preferred. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. Awesome. Now, the people are still asking a few questions to you. Okay. Someone said, I pray the present office holders will transition into innovative and compassionate leadership. That's also coming to you. They say, how do you suggest, that's barrister for you, Olunkwa, how do you suggest we trigger the change in the current mindset to bring about this political willpower to punish offenders, as you mentioned? What do you have to say to this, sir? That's for Barrister Olunkwa.
Barrister, we can't hear you.
Yes, it's coming. Okay, sorry, a bit of technical challenge.
Sir.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Can you go ahead? Go ahead and
Hello?
answer, Barrister. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead and answer.
Please, can you, please, I'm having a little issue with network. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, sir. How do you suggest we trigger the change in the current mindset to bring about this political willpower to punish offenders, as you mentioned? Talking about mindsets.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And punishment of offenders.
Okay, the mindset. Okay, on the issue of the mindset, it is via programs. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Organization of seminars to educate the people, to educate the electorate, House of Assembly members, members of the Hallowed Chamber of the Senate, House of Rep members. We need to educate them. You know, there is a Latin maxim that says, ignorantum pote non excusia. Ignorance of what they are supposed to do is not an excuse. However, we need to educate them to change their mindset. It is very important. Beyond the education, we need to strengthen our institutions. I give you an example. We have the judiciary, we have the legislative arm of government, and we have the executive arm of government. It is only the executive arm of government that have autonomy. The two other arms of government rely solely on the executive for peanuts. We need to address all that. So we need an autonomy for the judiciary. We need an autonomy for the legislative arm of government so that they can be able to come up with policies that will improve the lives of the people without hindrance, without fear, without favor. Thank you, sir.
Very much, sir. Eminently presented. Our speakers, you will agree with me, our participants, our attendees from all over the world. I'd like to recognize Vince Onyekwelo. He's a discussant on security issues, a former police officer. I see you all the time on TV, pushing the frontiers of knowledge in the area of security. Thank you for joining us. I see a lot of people joining from different sectors, from the diplomatic corps, from the security community, from the economic community, from just about across the world, from within and without. We are excited that Africa is not being left alone, that people like you find time to discuss Africa's issues. At this juncture, you permit me to invite each of the speakers, and I'd like to play around the order a little. I'd like to start with Crystal. So in 1 minute, give their closing comments based on what you said, and maybe something you left out in the course of presentation as we tie up this session. I believe it's been a day well spent. I wish we can continue. So Crystal, if you can hear me, let's have your closing comments. Is there something you left out from your slides that you would like to share? 1 minute is fine. Okay, as I wait, Crystal, Dr. Asma, I'd also want to hear from you. I know you were rushing your slides. Would you mind if I gave you 1 minute?
Sure, sure, definitely. I did rush through my slides.
On behalf of Barrister Olunkwa, let me give you 2.
Okay. You know, yeah, so it's about how do we build security institutions, security sector confidence, right? And the security social contract, knowing that, I mean, we have in the United States, we're facing a shift, right? We're questioning our police systems and our police institutions. And so understanding how to stabilize those institutions is really important, but it's a whole of government approach. It doesn't just take one part of the population. It's both males and females. It's socioeconomic, behavioral. I mean, there's so many indicators. And something that hasn't been mentioned that really fueled a lot of the conflicts recently is climate change. We need more women in the climate change field. We need to address climate change and its correlations to the security sector. Understanding how climate is driving violence, right? We know that a great deal of violence has occurred as a result of the changes in climate. People aren't able to get access to their most basic human needs, and you know, they get desperate. And so it's just kind of understanding that and really investing in that and the role of women in that. I agree everything with Crystal that you said. I mean, the role of women is so integral. We are the mothers of the nation, right? We're the mothers of the children. We understand how to raise community. And we can't forget, we're half the world, we're half the population. And so those are just some key points I wanted to, to leave in my closing. So thank you.
Awesome. How do they say it? Dr. Asma, I stay with you. Train a woman and you train the nation. Is that true?
Involve women in the security sector. Yeah.
How do we
educate women in the security sector, leading the security sector?
Okay. So I don't know whether this is a serious comment or maybe I want to lighten the mood a little bit, because the mood of this presentation is really, really serious. We're dealing with security, we're dealing with human lives and so on. How do we deal with women with guns in Sambisa forest? How do we manage that?
What?
How do we deal with women with guns inside Sambisa forests?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
How are we going to deal with women holding guns to manage security in the Sambisa forest? That's where the Boko Haram chaps stay.
I think it will be the same way that we handle men in that respect. It's going to have to be, I mean, there will be an element of military intervention to some extent, because there is fighting, but I think what we need to address is the root cause that pushed them into arming themselves. And I think it's even that it won't be too hard to identify those. I'm unfortunately not too familiar with the issue, but since men are traditionally the ones that resort to arm, the fact that women actually resorted to arm, it would either be there's an element of coercion, or there's a specific element, like there's a specific root cause there that might be, I don't know, lack of involvement and lack of access to education. Insecurity, for example, if a lot of the men in the region have been forcibly or not enrolled in these conflicts, that leaves them as the sole provider of security of their community, and they would have to perhaps resort to arming themselves to protect their household, their crops, whatever it is that they're protecting. And I think, I mean, to the risk of repeating myself 18 times, I think the issue still lies in addressing the root cause here. I think there would have to be an analysis of what those are. And that's where people like Dr. Abuzakuk can come in. But once that is done, it has to be local government. It perhaps also some partnerships with NGOs who have experience in dealing with such issues elsewhere, because unfortunately the national government cannot deal with issues like that. We've seen it so far that they unfortunately are either ill-equipped, incompetent, or not necessarily interested in dealing with that. So I think it would be the same solutions that I brought forward. Removing any motivation to join a conflict, because no one turns to violence as their first, their first reaction. It's when they don't have a choice.
I agree with you totally. Thank you so much, and I'm proud of you. You've done very well. You've done very well. You've done very well. There's hope for us. Dr. Asma, we're not going to have the last of Konjoiwala. I'm sure we're not. We will not have the last of Bezekosili, and this is not going to be the last Dr. Asma. With Crystal and the likes of her, the half of a yellow sun lady, what's her name again? Okay, and many others. Yeah. So there's hope for Africa, and it's not all doomed.
Oh yes.
Barrister Olunkwa, do you agree?
I concur with you, sir.
So in your closing comments, what?
I concur.
I heard you. So what do you have to say to the women of Africa? What do you have to say
with
to the
you, sir?
Africa?
I agree. I agree.
Okay. All right. So I have some more questions that are coming in, which is exciting. This is from Kennedy. He said, how can it be convincingly proved to the international communities when a government is either supporting or only funding a particular people or tribe? Well, to be debated. A government is suspected of leaking intelligence to the perpetrators of crime, acts of terror, and failing to bring them to justice. I believe Barrister Olunkwa has addressed this issue of punishment of offenders. But this question is out there. Maybe Barrister Olunkwa, would you want to use this as your final comment as we tie this up? How can it be convincingly proved to the international communities when a government is either supporting or only funding a particular people or tribe? B, a government is suspected of leaking intelligence to the perpetrators of crime, acts of terror, and failing to bring them to justice.
We'll do this in 1 minute or two, sir. Vice Olunwa.
Hello, so I'm so sorry. I've been struggling with the network. However,
Yes.
can you please be kind enough to repeat the question? I'm having a lot of challenge with the network.
Okay, you can hear me now. Can you?
I can hear you now. Please go ahead and repeat the question, sir, please.
Okay, so the question is, how can it be convincingly proved to the international communities when A, government is either supporting or only funding a particular people or tribe? B, a government is suspected of leaking intelligence to the perpetrators of crime, in bracket acts of terror, and failing to bring them to justice?
The only way you can bring it to the notice of the international community is to provide evidence. There is a Latin maxim for it in law, res ipsa loquitur. The document speaks for itself. You want to indict the government, you need to provide evidence. You need to indict anybody whatsoever, you need to provide evidence. In law, we do not allow sentiment to becloud our sense of reasoning or judgment. We go by a hardcore evidence. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. As we round off, we want to thank all the speakers, we want to thank all the persons who have joined us today. Just to round off with this, I stumbled on this on social media today, and I'll just read this. It says, what causes conflict? 1, poor communication, lack of compromise, needs not met, prejudice, intolerance, self-interest, ignorance, desire for power, lack of empathy, making assumptions. And like someone said, assumption is the lowest level of knowledge. My name is Obinaya Urapa. I have spoken to you or moderated out of Abuja, Nigeria. It's been my singular honor and privilege to moderate with such distinguished speakers from morning till now. And I want to thank the AfricaFora team for finding me worthy to do this, and to say that when next AfricaFora invites all of you attendees and panelists, do not hesitate. Like our people will say, we join forces, we achieve a bigger thing. A broom is tougher to break, but a stick is easier. Thank you very much. It's been my honor and privilege. God bless you, and do have a great week, and look forward to tomorrow to be better.
Thank you. Dr. Abuzakuk, thank you so much for joining us at 6 a.m.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's good, appreciate it. It was great exchanging with you and Barrister Olunkwa. It's been a pleasure discussing this issue with you. Thank you so much.
Crystal, the feeling is mutual. Thank you so much.
Yes, very much so.
All right.
Honored to be on this forum.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Abuzakuk. I appreciate. Dr. Barrister Olunkwa, thank you so much. Mr. Rapper, thank you. Crystal, thank you. And Dr. Abuzakuk, you can go back to sleep. I am so sorry.
Back to work now. That's okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much.
You too. Be blessed. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Dr. Vince. Thank you.
Mr. Rockpa, would you like to tell the attendees about our sessions tomorrow?
Okay, you can help me.
Of course. I think the sessions that we have tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m. Central European Summertime, we have a session on health, actually, and looking at it from an African perspective. So it's highlighting the necessity of a non-Western understanding of modern medicine. And we have some very interesting speakers at 10 on that. And then we have another session at 11 talking about shifting the gaze on African and Black and African youth from burden to power. We've already had a contribution by Dr. Nzuko yesterday on this topic, and shifting the understanding that the African youth is a liability, but actually an asset. So thank you everyone for joining us today on Africa Day, but be sure to join us tomorrow and tune in from 10 a.m. Central European Summertime or 9 a.m. West African time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Have fun. Happy Africa Day, everyone. Bye.
Happy Africa Day, everyone.
Happy Africa Day.
Make Africa great. Make Africa proud. Let's join hands together. We'll fight this. We'll win it.
Thank you, Winifred, for all you do. We appreciate you.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you so much, my brother. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.